If you're wondering what Diddy's jail conditions look like, Inside Edition gave everyone an inside look just the other day.
There have been 2 murders, 4 suicides, and numerous stabbings and lockdowns in recent years.
Housed in the same jail where Jeffrey Epstein took his life, Diddy is about to have some sleepless nights. And no one is going to be surprised if Diddy actually ends up like Epstein, because the people he could expose if taken to court are just as powerful as the people Epstein was in bed with. In fact, if you take a close look at the indictment, they're the same people. Diddy finally indicted. Hell on Earth is the name given to the jail where Diddy is currently being held, and that's because the conditions there are nothing short of horrifying.
How bad is it inside this federal lockup? There have been 2 murders, 4 suicides, and numerous stabbings and lockdowns in recent years. It's so out of control inside that 4 federal judges are reportedly refusing to send any more prisoners here.
It seems that Diddy is the exception. The Metropolitan Detention Center, commonly known as MDC, is a federal administrative detention facility in the heart of Brooklyn, New York. The prison was designed to house male and female inmates, primarily those awaiting trial or sentencing. Its purpose was to serve as a temporary holding facility, but over the years, it has gained a notorious reputation for its deplorable conditions and the high-profile inmates who have been detained within its walls. The MDC has earned its name, Hell on Earth, due to the appalling conditions and harrowing experiences faced by its inmates. The facility's environment is a breeding ground for despair, violence, and neglect, leading to numerous suicides, murders, and a general atmosphere of fear and hopelessness. One of the most glaring issues at MDC is the lack of basic necessities. In 2019, a power outage left inmates without heat, light, or hot water for days during one of the coldest winters in recent memory. The temperature inside the cells reportedly dropped to near freezing levels, forcing inmates to wrap themselves head to toe in towels and blankets. The crisis came to a head with protesters gathering outside the facility, where inmates banged on the walls of the jail and flashed nightlights in a plea for help. The power outage was not an isolated incident. Reports of rat infestations, mold, and lack of access to clean drinking water are common. Violence is another pervasive issue within MDC. Inmates live in constant fear of attacks from fellow detainees and even correctional officers. The facility's environment is also conducive to mental health crises, leading to a disturbingly high number of suicides. The overall environment at MDC is one of neglect and despair. Inmates are often denied access to medical care, mental health services, and legal representation. R. Kelly, the disgraced R&B singer, faced multiple charges of sexual misconduct and reported poor living conditions and limited access to basic necessities during his time at MDC. Diddy's lawyers have even called the jail inhuman.
They told the judge the jail he was being sent to is dreadful, dirty, inhuman, and an ongoing tragedy.
But how did Diddy get here? On the evening of September 17, 2024, Diddy was apprehended at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York, catching him completely off guard. The arrest follows a series of serious allegations, including sexual assault and misconduct, that have plagued the rapper turned entrepreneur. It turns out Diddy had voluntarily relocated to New York in anticipation of the charges. The rapper knew what was coming. Diddy had been arrested and charged in a 3-count indictment. The charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution.
Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution.
This indictment, announced by Damian Williams, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and William S. Walker, the acting special agent in charge of the New York Field Office of Homeland Security Investigations, paints a grim picture of a man who allegedly used his business empire to commit heinous crimes. According to the indictment, from 2008 to the present, Diddy led a criminal enterprise that engaged in a litany of crimes, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Diddy, who appeared in a New York City federal courtroom wearing a black t-shirt and gray sweatpants, pleaded not guilty to all charges. But the details of the indictment are nothing short of shocking. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams stated that for years, Sean Combs used his business empire to sexually abuse and exploit women, as well as to commit other acts of violence. Williams urged victims of Diddy's alleged abuse to come forward, emphasizing that the investigation is far from over. As alleged in the indictment, for years, Sean Combs used the business empire he controlled to sexually abuse and exploit women, as well as to commit other acts of violence and obstruction of justice. Today, he is charged with racketeering and sex trafficking offenses. If you have been a victim of Combs' alleged abuse, or if you know anything about his alleged crimes, we urge you to come forward. This investigation is far from over, Damian Williams announced. The indictment describes a criminal enterprise led by Diddy that existed to facilitate his abuse and exploitation of women, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. One of the most shocking aspects of the indictment is the allegation that Diddy organized events known as freak-offs. These were elaborate sex performances that involved frequent days-long sexual activity with male commercial sex workers, some of whom were transported over state lines. Diddy allegedly used violence and intimidation to ensure participation in these events, leveraging his power over victims by distributing narcotics, exploiting his financial support, and threatening to cut off that support. He also threatened to expose embarrassing and sensitive recordings of these events if the women did not comply with his demands. The indictment also details repeated physical abuse by Diddy. He allegedly assaulted women by striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Diddy also allegedly assaulted witnesses to his abuse, further demonstrating his willingness to use violence to maintain control. One particularly disturbing incident mentioned in the indictment involves a 2016 hotel surveillance video that allegedly shows Diddy physically assaulting his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. When a hotel security worker intervened, Diddy reportedly tried to bribe the worker with a stack of cash to keep the incident quiet. Diddy relied on his power as a multifaceted business empire leader to commit these crimes. Employees of Diddy's businesses, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, personal assistants, and household staff, acted as intermediaries to arrange travel and hotel rooms, stock the hotel rooms for Diddy's commercial sex activity, contact or locate women and other individuals he targeted for abuse, and conceal and cover up the abuse. This criminal concealment included efforts to prevent law enforcement from learning about his abuse. Diddy is charged with 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, 1 count of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison and a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, and 1 count of transportation for purposes of prostitution, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Diddy's luck seems to have totally run out because he was also denied bail and will have to stay in jail as the case unfolds. The prosecutors argued he was a serious flight risk. According to news outlets, Diddy's lawyers proposed a bail package that included his $48 million home in Miami and his private jet and restricted female visitors apart from his mother, his daughters, and his daughters' mothers.
Diddy's lawyers were so eager to keep him out of jail, they offered his palatial $48 million home in Miami Beach and his private jets as bail. Today, they are even offering to restrict female visitors to his homes, except for his mother, daughters, and the mothers of his children if he is released.
That's not all. His lawyers even agreed to include a $50 million bond co-signed by Mr. Diddy, his mother, and other family members, home detention, surrender of his passport, weekly drug test, and a visitor log that would be submitted to pre-trial services each night. However, the judge revealed that he was concerned Diddy would obstruct justice and tamper with witnesses. Diddy may actually deserve everything that's happening to him because his victims have been suffering silently for years. But now, they have started exposing him one by one. Diddy exposed by his victims. The first woman who Diddy abused and came forward was Joy Dickerson Neal, who filed a lawsuit in November 2023. The story of Joy Dickerson Neal and Sean Diddy Combs begins in the vibrant and competitive world of the 1990s music industry. Joey Dickerson Neal was part of the same social circle as Diddy, who was then an up-and-coming music mogul. Their paths crossed professionally when they both appeared in the music video for Straight from the Soul by Finesse and Sinquis. Joy and Diddy belonged to the same social circle, often crossing paths at industry events and gatherings. Despite Diddy's persistent advances, Joy consistently rejected him, maintaining a professional distance. However, Joy reluctantly agreed to an early dinner with Diddy on January 3rd, 1991, while on school break for the holidays. The decision was not made lightly. She had been wary of his advances but felt pressured by the social and professional implications of continually rejecting someone of his stature. They chose to dine at the famous Wells restaurant in Harlem, a beloved establishment known as the home of chicken and waffles since 1938. The restaurant's warm and inviting atmosphere belied the sinister turn the evening would take. During the dinner, Joy needed to use the restroom and left her drink unattended. She alleges that this seemingly harmless moment gave Diddy the perfect opportunity to spike her drink. Unaware of what had happened, Joy returned to the table and continued with the evening. After dining, Diddy insisted that Joy accompany him as he attended to a few things in the city. Reluctantly, she agreed, getting into his car, a decision that would haunt her for years. As they drove through the city, Diddy produced a blunt and asked Joy to take a hit. Feeling pressured and unsure of how to refuse, she reluctantly agreed. From From that point on, her memory becomes hazy, a blur of fragmented images and sensations. Joy alleges that Diddy had intentionally drugged her, leaving her in a physical state where she could not independently stand or walk. Their first stop was a music studio. However, Joy was unable to get out of the car, her body betraying her as the drugs took hold. Diddy then drove to a place he was staying, where the night took an even darker turn. Joy alleges that it was here, in a place where she should have felt safe, that Diddy sexually assaulted her. In the days following the alleged assault, Joy chose not to seek medical attention or report the incident to the police. A complex mix of fear, shame, and confusion drove her to this decision. Instead, Joy withdrew into self-isolation at her home, attempting to process the trauma on her own. The psychological impact of the assault was immediate and severe. Joy experienced flashbacks and insomnia, her mind replaying the events of that night over and over again. The sense of violation and betrayal was overwhelming, and she struggled to find a way to cope. However, the nightmare was far from over. Joy soon discovered that Diddy had secretly recorded the incident without her knowledge or consent. Devontae Swing, a mutual friend, allegedly told her that Diddy had shown him the tape. The worst part is that Diddy showed everyone the tape, according to Devontae. The revelation that her most private and traumatic moments had been shared with others added another layer of humiliation and betrayal. According to Joy, the circulation of the video was detrimental to her health, reputation, and professional opportunities. The knowledge that the footage was out there, being viewed by others, was a constant source of anxiety and distress. The emotional and psychological toll of the alleged assault and the subsequent actions taken by Diddy were immense. Joy's mental health began to deteriorate, and she found it increasingly difficult to function in her daily life. The flashbacks and insomnia persisted, and she struggled with suicidal thoughts. The weight of the trauma was too much to bear alone, and she eventually sought psychiatric care. Joy was diagnosed with clinical depression, a condition that would require ongoing treatment and support. The impact on her education and career was significant. She eventually dropped out of school, unable to focus on her studies. But Joy wasn't the only woman who Diddy abused in the 1990s. Another woman, identified as Jane Doe, also came forward the same day as Joy with a deeply disturbing account of her encounter with Diddy. Jane Doe's lawsuit paints a horrifying picture of coercion, and sexual assault, implicating not only Diddy but also singer Aaron Hall. According to the lawsuit, Jane Doe and a friend attended an MCA event in 1990 or 1991, where Diddy and Aaron Hall extended an invitation to an after-party. Little did they know that this invitation would lead to a nightmarish ordeal that would forever scar their lives. Upon arriving at Aaron Hall's apartment, Jane Doe alleges that Diddy coerced her into engaging in sexual acts against her will. However, the situation took a sinister turn when Aaron Hall forcefully entered the room, pinning her down and subjecting her to. But the horror didn't end there. In another room, Jane Doe claims that both Diddy and Aaron Hall forced her friend to engage in sexual acts as well. The trauma inflicted upon these women was unimaginable, leaving them with lifelong scars and emotional pain. To make matters even more chilling, the lawsuit details an incident that occurred 2 days after the alleged assault. Fearing that his then-girlfriend would discover the truth, Diddy reportedly went to the home where Jane Doe and her friend were staying. There, he allegedly choked Jane Doe until she lost consciousness. The fourth lawsuit against Diddy alleged that the music mogul, along with former Bad Boy Entertainment president Harve Pierre, engaged in a heinous act of gang against another unnamed Jane Doe when she was just a 17-year-old high school student. The details of this lawsuit are truly shocking. According to court documents obtained by media outlets, the plaintiff, Jane Doe, claims that the incident occurred in 2003. She alleges that Harve Pierre approached her at a lounge in Michigan, claiming to be best friends with Diddy. To prove their relationship, Pierre called Diddy, and the woman alleges that Pierre and Diddy convinced her to take a private jet to Daddy's House recording studio, owned and operated by Diddy himself. The lawsuit includes photos that Jane Doe claims were taken at the studio that night, including one showing her sitting on Diddy's lap. According to the lawsuit, once at the studio, Diddy, Pierre, and an unidentified third assailant plied Jane Doe with drugs and alcohol. They then allegedly subjected her to a vicious and horrifying gang. The suit describes the incident as part of a sex trafficking scheme, with the defendants exploiting a vulnerable high school teenager and transporting her by private jet to New York City, where the assault took place. According to Jane Doe's attorney, Diddy and Pierre preyed on a vulnerable high school teenager as part of a sex trafficking scheme that involved plying her with drugs and alcohol and transporting her by private jet to New York City, where she was gang by the 3 individual defendants at Diddy's studio. And while these cases are still hovering above Diddy's head, there are some crimes that he seems to have gotten away with. From shooting a woman in the face to beating up his ex-girlfriend. Crimes Diddy got away with. The first time Diddy was ever publicly accused of assault was back in 2019 by his ex-girlfriend, Gina Hewin. Gina Hewin, also known as Virginia 5, first came into the public eye when she shared intimate videos of herself and Diddy on her Instagram. These videos, which showed the two getting quite cozy, were quickly taken down, but not before the gossip outlet The Shade Room got a hold of them and shared them on their popular social media accounts. This was just the beginning of a series of revelations that would shock the world. Gina Hewin and Diddy had an on and off relationship that spanned several years. According to Gina, their relationship was tumultuous and filled with abuse. She described how Diddy would stomp and hit her, leaving her mentally, emotionally, and physically scarred. One of the most harrowing incidents Hewin described was when Diddy allegedly stomped on her stomach with such force that it knocked the wind out of her.
He stomped on my stomach really hard, and I took the wind out of my breath. I couldn't breathe. He took my hair and was dragging me across the grass in my hair with my hair.
This horrifying account is just one example of the physical abuse Hewin claims to have suffered at the hands of Diddy. She also alleged that he grabbed her by the hair and punched the back of her head repeatedly.
So I was laying on my back, and he stood over me, and he started punching me like this. He avoided my face, but he started punching me on the side of my head, and I was just covering my face.
Diddy has also been accused of attempted murder. On December 27, 1999, Diddy and his then girlfriend, Jennifer Lopez, had been celebrating a soon-to-be-released album by Shine, Diddy's 21-year-old protege, at Midtown's Club New York. As Diddy's entourage was leaving, carrying a bottle of champagne, he accidentally bumped into one of the club's patrons, knocking a drink out of his hand. The man, Matthew Allen, a street tough known as Scar, responded with a shove. Things escalated as one of Allen's companions allegedly threw a stack of money in Diddy's face.
Puffy and Shine allegedly got into an argument with another partier shortly before 3 a.m. Someone tossed a wad of cash at Combs as a sign of disrespect. Suddenly, all hell broke loose.
Suddenly, gunshots shattered the air as bullets struck two men and a woman. The woman, shot in the face, was rushed to hospital where she fought for her life. Diddy and J-Lo were detained after a gun was found in their car as they left the nightclub.
The gun was discovered in the vehicle. At that point, a sergeant on the scene ordered everyone who was in the vehicle under arrest.
Police charged Sean Puffy Combs and Jennifer Lopez with felony gun possession.
The vehicle was stopped because it fled the scene and jumped a set of red lights. The gun was found lying in the car and was identified as one that had been reported stolen in Georgia, and none of the 4 occupants of the car had a license for the gun. However, in 2001, a Manhattan jury acquitted the hip-hop mogul of all charges brought against him, which included 4 counts of illegal possession of a gun and 1 count of bribery. But this is where the story gets a little more interesting. Shine, who was Diddy's protege, was found guilty of 5 of the 8 charges against him. As it turns out, the woman who was shot in the face has been trying to tell the world that the music mogul shot her for years. However, her testimony has fallen on deaf ears for over 2 decades.
Yeah, and you have said since really right after the shooting that it was P. Diddy who shot you.
I said it immediately. I literally watched them pull out the guns. I've had a clear point of view. I mean, for God's sake, I got shot in my nose.
But Diddy's crimes get even more sinister as he is accused of murdering his close associates. In a 2022 interview, Jaguar Wright, a singer, songwriter, actress, and music whistleblower, made some stunning claims about Diddy. Her accusations led people down a rabbit hole that connected many dots, and the revelations seemed nothing short of a conspiracy theory.
Kim is dead. Heavy D is dead. Andre Harrell is dead. The only 2 left are Puffy and Al almost died. Isn't that interesting?
According to her, Uptown Records was started by 4 people: Heavy D, Andre Harrell, Al B. Sure, and Diddy. Kim Potter was the longest-serving employee in the company, and she was Andre's assistant. On November 8, 2011, tragedy struck when Heavy D was found dead, face down, in his Beverly Hills home. The cause of death was initially reported as a heart attack. Heavy D was not just an artist, he was also working on a tell-all book before his death. Could his revelations have posed a threat to someone? Was he silenced to protect the secrets of Uptown Records? On May 7, 2020, the music industry was shaken to its core when news broke of Andre Harrell's passing. Like Heavy D, his cause of death was reported as a heart attack. It is worth noting that Andre Harrell was also working on a book before his untimely demise. Was he about to reveal secrets that someone wanted to keep buried? Could his passing be connected to the hidden truths of Uptown Records? On November 15, 2018, the world mourned the passing of Kim Potter. Initially, her cause of death was reported as pneumonia. However, the first coroner's report ruled her death as a homicide, citing the presence of toxins in her body. Kim Porter was also in the process of writing a book before her untimely demise. Could her revelations have posed a threat to someone? Did her knowledge of the inner workings of Uptown Records make her a target? Finally, there is Al B. Sure, who was also writing a book about his life before he went into a coma. Luckily, he survived and has been on the road to recovery. He recently made public comments that suggested that he's producing a film about his life story and suggests that the film will expose Diddy for having involvement in putting him into a coma.
Finally, we're going to be producing the Al B. Shore life story. So hold on to your britches, and you'll really understand how I ended up in a coma. You're really going to need to call Homeland Security.
These revelations were shocking and led everyone to ask why everyone around Diddy suffered similar misfortunes under similar circumstances.
Has Puffy ever been in a coma? Has anything happened to him? He must be the luckiest because it seems like everybody that worked at Uptown Records from the very beginning is gone.
Is there any foul play involving Diddy's former associates? Will he get away with these crimes? Only time will tell. Meanwhile, if you enjoyed this video, click on the boxes playing on your screen to watch similar content.